Oh boy, it has been a crazy couple of weeks. We've had a blizzard come through the Northeast, and guess what? The mayor of Baltimore kind of defied a culture. He said, no chairs. Plus, the lady who was the infamous teenager that became the butt of R. Kelly jokes speaks out. And y'all, there's an AI police going around. So we're going to talk about all that and much more on this week's episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. I am your host, Brian H. Waters. This show is brought to you by 6 Heart Media. I was going through the internet today, and I was like, all right, I got a lot to talk about. I ain't gonna lie. Brother got his hair done. Shout out to my sister. Shout out to my barber for getting me in the last minute. So y'all know what that means. It's time for some content. Shout out to Queen P.R, who always makes sure that I stay on top of things. Make sure y'all check out last week's Loving Dem Gates incredible episode, and I can't wait to record this week. But I was going through the timeline, so there's a lot of things we got to talk about, a lot of uncomfortable conversations to be had. First, I want to start with the name Miss Reshona Landfair. That's a name we should not know. We should not even be aware of her existence unless she went on to become a star. But she is the lady who, at the age of 12, R. Kelly was, she was in R. Kelly's camp. And later on, I believe when she was 14, she was the girl who was in the videos. The video that was shopped around. So I was in my teenage years when the infamous R. Kelly tapes came out. And I remember the people I knew, everybody condemned it, right? Says, oh man, R. Kelly's a sick person. How could he be up here having teenagers in these videos? And this was at a time when I remember people really kind of turning away from him. Was shortly after Best of Both Worlds and Chocolate Factory came out, right? I remember people saying it was just sick. It was ridiculous that he would do such a thing. But as time moved on, I remember it kind of becoming a punchline. And in some cases, a joke. People love talking about old R. Kelly tapes. Now, the sad part is, them things went around the hood like it was a regular pornographic video, but it was around the hood. And, I'm proud of the people I know who would say, no, we're not watching that. That's child porn. And, sometimes you couldn't avoid it. You scroll, and as time moved along, it was be on social media. And, so she finally spoke out, and she's writing a memoir. And I was reading the Rolling Stone article on this. It's about a 20-minute read. Actually, I'm going to be honest with you. I listened to it. And, a few things stood out. One was, stuff we already knew about. The parents was manipulated, promised a recording track and all that. But also learning that she dealt with all of this during, a lot of the backlash and when the Surviving R. Kelly came out, being in contact, and everybody was trying to protect R. Kelly. And she said that if she was a Caucasian girl, this wouldn't have been a problem. This would have been a different problem, I should say. If she was a Caucasian girl, this would have been a different issue. She certainly wouldn't have became the butt of jokes. She wouldn't have been called fast. She wouldn't have been saying, stuff wouldn't have been said, oh, she was experienced. What do you think was going to happen? It would have been lock R. Kelly up, throw them into jail, put them under the cell. And even then bringing up that, young black women develop faster, they're curvier. But that never gives men the right. What I used to always hate, and I'm so glad that my father never condoned actions or words like this, never participated in those conversations. But the lines I used to hate, and still do, was when I would hear old men saying, man, I can't wait till she turned 18. Hell, you had people saying that about Miley Cyrus. And I always thought that was just ridiculous. Like, you're making plans for a young woman. I got criticized on this very platform almost 2 years ago because I said Shaquille O'Neal was even sick for looking at Ice Spice because she's young enough to be his daughter. And I remember I used to work with this guy, and he basically told me in so many words, and this guy was in his 50s. I'm 19, 20 at the time. And this guy was in his mid 50s. And there was a girl who worked there, and she was a little bit older than me, maybe like 25, 26. And she was saying, slick stuff. She was flirting with him, and he said, young enough to be my daughter. And I always respected him for that. And I still feel the same way, So when I sit back and I listen to this article, I felt for this lady. She works at a high school, and she said, every day going in hearing R. Kelly's music. And nobody ever considered the triggers that had for her. So I want to say this. I hope the memoir is therapeutic for her. And I hope that more people can change their behavior. We've seen this so much in society. A young woman, and this has happened in a lot of families, young woman goes to their mother or their grandmother and say, your boyfriend's touching me. My uncle's touching me. And it's always, well, what did you do? What was you wearing? And it's never taught. They should keep their hands to themselves, their comments to themselves, change their behavior. It's inappropriate. It's never taught that way, but it's always easy to blame the woman. It's something I always hated. So I want to send all love to her, and we hopefully as a society will do better. I brought up the snow. Mayor Brandon Scott, the Baltimore City Mayor, Baltimore City, the city I reside. Y'all may have seen him go viral when he said that you could not put out trash cans to save your parking space. So let me school y'all for those listeners who aren't from Baltimore. It's always been the culture, especially if you live on a busy street. You shovel. Everybody gets out, they shovel their own space. Sometimes the neighborhood will all come out, shovel together. You'll see, like, I lived in a cul-de-sac growing up, and I remember my dad and a lot of the other people in the neighborhood, they would be out shoveling the snow together while we'd be out playing in it. And as time moved along, sometimes there's neighborhood camaraderie, sometimes it wasn't. But you shovel your parking space out, and during the bad weather, you put a chair in that space. If you drive it, you see a chair, you don't move it. Nothing Mayor Brandon Scott had to do was then say, no, don't respect the chairs. If I see a chair, I'm throwing them away. We trying to clean the streets. Now, that part goes viral, of course. What he did also follow up and say was, now, if you going to put the chairs out, shovel your neighbor's spot out too. Help the elderly. But of course, we can't take nothing seriously, especially as black folks, in Baltimore being a predominantly black city. We saw a lot of people sitting up there posting videos and pictures of them putting not only chairs, but tables. I see somebody put a wheelchair. I seen people put a walker. You see all these different things. So, it's one of those things that what irritates me is sometimes it's like, come on. I know rules are rules, protocols are protocols, but the mayor can't act like he didn't grow up here. He know what it was like. At one point, maybe he didn't, but I would think at one point he put a chair in the space, and if it wasn't him, somebody he knows. So, yeah, that's what's happening here. Hey, real quick, if you are a fan of Beyond the Gates, well, make sure you are subscribed, one, to the channel, but also check out the playlist where Queen P.R and I do a deep dive every week, as well as recaps on the brand new hit show, Beyond the Gates. Check out Loving Them Gates. GameStop. I don't know if y'all saw this. GameStop says you cannot trade in people. That is a real tweet. I was scrolling and I saw that GameStop there was a guy trying to trade in his girlfriend. And it's so funny that I have to read that tweet, because you sit there, you're like, no way. You see things on Instagram and TikTok and you say, oh, no, that ain't real. But no, this was real. And this tweet says, we regret to inform our customers of an incident today where an individual attempted to trade his girlfriend in for store credit towards a new PS5. Store associate Nevaeh had to explain that our systems do not allow for human exchanges, even though she appeared to be in good condition. While GameStop offers store credit for used consoles, games, accessories, and accessories, significant others are not eligible for trade-ins at this time. Thank you for understanding. Now, a couple weeks, I think it was definitely before Christmas. Definitely before Christmas, GameStop was doing a promotion, trade in anything, and you were guaranteed at least $5. And they said they was prepared. People was going to bring in all types of stuff. They said, but everything was available. Everything was eligible. The fact that somebody even addressed this, I mean, it's also going to show you there's some sick people out in this world. And I say that to say we need to prioritize mental health. Now, of course, people can be up there trying to be joking. Maybe this is all a skit to bring GameStop, because I'm pretty sure, 4.4 million views on the tweet. And GameStop, they're not hurting for views. They do about a couple 100,000. They got 1.8 million viewers, but that's one of those things that will trend. So I didn't know people was going to try to trade in people. All these years I've been playing video games. But nonetheless, it's crazy. Y'all got to stop being the AI police. You ever see people when you're scrolling online and there's a trend that takes place? And as the trends takes place, you see about 60 people, 70, 80, hundreds of people doing it, right? Then there's always that one person that's got to make a joke and say, this is what my timeline looks like. Remember when everybody was doing the little Bitmoji things, and then everybody said, this is my whole timeline. Looks like a cartoon. Look like the Cartoon Network. Then there was the time when people was making Funko Pops and stuff. Well, now the thing is caricatures. You ask ChatGPT, please create a character based on what you know about me and my job. And you run it, whatever, it's cool. I did it. My sister was doing my hair. My brother-in-law, shout out to Terrell, Met Fitness. He showed me his. I said, cool. Let me see what they come up for me. I didn't post it yet. Just debating about it. And then, I'm sitting there scrolling and I see people, I'm not participating in that because they just using your information. You selling your likeness, this, that, and the other. Got news for you, buddy. I bet 99% of y'all never read the terms and conditions of your phones, your social media apps, or anything. They got your likeness anyway. So it was always crazy to me that people act like this, man. So, like even when you go into church, some churches will have signs that say, please note you are being live streamed and you could appear on the broadcast. But people don't read. So it's like, look, if people want to participate in this, it's enough heavy stuff happening every day in this world. Let people live. Let people live. Let people participate in something fun and light, such as making themselves into a caricature through ChatGPT. I can't even get the words out. Let them live, man. It's never that serious. I promise you. You don't have to participate, but don't rain on nobody else's parade. Because guess what? When you use Meta, it's based on AI systems. So 99 times out of 100, the program that you are talking about, you are not going to use because you don't want them stealing your information. You're talking to people on the program that's already taking your information. Sheesh. Couple more things before I get out of here, man. The NBA. Wow, we had some trades this week. James Harden going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Anthony Davis going down the street to the Washington Wizards. And Chris Paul was sent to Toronto, but the word on the street is he will not report, but they traded him. And they've been trying to find him a new home for months. Meanwhile, Giannis is still in Milwaukee at the time of this recording. Ja Morant is still in Memphis at the time of this recording. LeBron James is still in Los Angeles at the time of this recording. But, the NBA is out of whack. I'm sorry, it is. I look at things, I look at the way a lot of things been going, and as a fan, it's been hard to keep up. We went from growing up, I remember it was like players stayed with one team, and I know I'm gonna sound like an old person. Then you saw, movement. It was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, one of the greatest players of all time, Shaquille O'Neal played for, he got the rainbow jersey, right? But then you saw the player empowerment era, and you saw all these mega sports super teams being created. LeBron James going to the Heat and Chris Bosh going to the Heat. 4 years, then LeBron went his separate way, went back to Cleveland, but he couldn't go back to Cleveland the way it was constructed. He had to bring Kevin Love because Andrew Wiggins wasn't ready. Kevin Durant had to go to the Warriors. So you see all this movement happening, and you start to wonder, like, yo, what happened to the fun? What happened to the fun of competition? Now it seems like it's dialing back a little bit, but what's happening is players are requesting trades and they're moving because for whatever reason, they don't like something, but then they go play. No, they're going to play with their homeboys and friends. But then they come back and it's not working. So that's the part that's been like, bro, this is annoying. It's annoying. So, I'm like, I'm over it. You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll see. But it's gonna be interesting to see how the rest of the year plays out. As far as what happens with Anthony Davis, who probably won't even play this year. He's been hurt. We'll see what happens with LeBron. But the NBA is gonna look totally different. Let's move on to the WNBA before we get out of here. Cameron Brink, the ever so gorgeous Cameron Brink, and I say that respectfully as I say that about all the WNBA players, because guess what? They're all fine. There's some beautiful women in that league. But she was asked, would she ever do Playboy? Playboy has been changing the image a little bit. So, it's, I guess what you call tasteful nudes. Little bit, not so much of it's about, high quality photos. That's what they say. And, she's done photo shoots and, body issues and, sometimes in the body issues, she's been nude, just we don't see it. But we're asked, would she bear everything for the camera? She said, depends on what her fiance says. She's getting ready to get married. Congratulations to her and her fiance. But she's getting ready to get married. I am a Los Angeles Sparks fan, so I'm excited for her to be playing basketball and dunking on people. Hopefully the WNBA get it together. I mean, Unrivaled has been doing good, so we're happy about that. But we want to see WNBA get it together too, so we can watch women's basketball all year round. But I was like, the internet ain't gonna like this one. Why is she gonna get her fiance's approval? I'm like, look, that's their relationship, bro. That's their relationship. So if she wants to do it, but she wants to wait on his approval, by all means. I don't think that takes away from women empowerment. I think that's their relationship empowerment. But, it would be, it's interesting to see how the women in sports have been moving differently in this generation versus the previous generation. I just wish that the previous generation, the women could have got the respect that they deserve. I was playing March Madness 2000. I bought that part of my retro gaming pickups. And I never realized, I probably did when I played it, but didn't really think about the significance of it. But I was like, they got the women on here. I'm playing with Sue Bird on the game, man. And I was like, this is dope. So I was like, it's cool, but shout out to them. Shout out to Cameron Brink. Shout out to the women of the WNBA. But ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Thank y'all for joining me. Make sure you catch Loving Dem Gates. Queen P.R. and I have been having a lot of fun with that show. We recently, Chelsea and Madison looked like they was about to break up. Thankfully, they didn't. But I'm interested to see where the relationship goes from here. We got some deep dive episodes coming, plus some more content. Check me out on the Wrestling Realm Now podcast each and every Wednesday. Check me out on the Masked Man Show. I interview Liv Morgan with David Shoemaker. So very excited about that. And remember, folks, life is hard, life is tough, but do not let anyone place a ceiling above your success. So long, everyone. Thank you for joining this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. For more uncomfortable conversations, for some interviews, exclusive interviews, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Check out the playlist. We got this channel perfectly organized for you.